Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be listening. I'm your host, Monique Sever, and I'm the Litigation Support and eDiscovery Supervisor at Harper in Vancouver, Canada. Thanks for tuning in to this YouTube session on cyber attacks and eDiscovery. Certainly a timely topic, I think, in terms of general awareness of cyber threats and ensuring that people out there are vigilant, not just now, but always when it comes to cybersecurity. Today, our guest on the topic is Brandon Hollinder. Brandon is a licensed attorney and vice president of eDiscovery and cyber solutions at Epiq. With over 15 years of experience, he leads Epiq's eDiscovery managed services and cyber incident response business lines, focusing on technological and process innovation. But I'll let Brandon introduce himself a little bit more for those of you who may not know him. Brandon.
Hi, thank you, Monique. Very nice to be here. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to share. As you said, my name is Brandon Hollinder, Vice President of eDiscovery and Cyber Solutions at Epiq. So basically, my job and role is to work with clients every day who are facing the challenges of a cyber event, an attack, a breach, things of that nature, offering them solutions and helping them apply technology and process to meet their obligations there. So this has been a really hot topic. We've seen incredible growth in incidents that are occurring and kind of the downstream problems and things that people have to deal with here. So as you said, very timely. And that interaction and crossover to eDiscovery is growing more and more.
Very much so. All right, thanks so much, Brendan. Let's get right into it. Our first question is, how do cybersecurity and eDiscovery interact, especially when dealing with those cyber incidents? How does each play a role in the aftermath of an attack?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as we kind of teased out here, it is something that's becoming more and more relevant. I think it's a place where the eDiscovery world, the eDiscovery processes, the eDiscovery experts, they really have a great place to play in this and can add value. It's something where the cyber incident response and the eDiscovery, they're not the exact same thing. That's key to understand. They do have different goals, different obligations. You're not producing data. You're trying to get to a list of who was impacted, but really a lot of the same technology and some of the skill sets that you would use in eDiscovery can be applicable in cyber as well. You're still searching for data. You're still reviewing data. So understanding the best practices to do those things or having an eDiscovery skill set can really help you in the cyber landscape. And that's really the trend that we're seeing right now, because if you think about a cyber event, for most corporations, most entities, it's a rare occurrence or a one-time thing. eDiscovery, yeah, go ahead. eDiscovery happens all the time, right? We're doing litigation, we're doing investigations. So the processes, the workflow, the people in place to work on eDiscovery are usually there, and there's something. In cyber, it's, well, this happens once every 10 years or 5 years. So you don't have a day-to-day person there necessarily. So eDiscovery folks are being called on with their knowledge, their skills to help in those cyber events. Some other things to keep in mind too is with this intersection is that a cyber event can often lead to traditional eDiscovery. What we're seeing more and more is they're turning into a class action. Okay, you've been breached, people's data has been exposed. Those people are now forming a class and suing the entity that was breached, saying there's harm to me, my data was stolen. It might be sold on the black market. So making sure that you're going through and understanding and preparing for the cyber event, knowing that litigation might come after it. You might have litigation hold needs that arise because it's now an anticipation of litigation. Involving attorneys in that process, again, so that the work you're doing on the cyber response can be under attorney-client privilege or attorney work product. And so even if you're not using your eDiscovery experts or consultants to execute on the tasks of the cyber response, they're going to have a role to play downstream. So getting them involved so that they can help say, these are the things we need to do when that eDiscovery piece comes up. That's going to be important. But finally, what we are really seeing is it is an opportunity for those eDiscovery folks, the people who have the skill set, the knowledge, those processes to really benefit that organization. A cyber event is a really chaotic time. It's scary. So if you have process and you have experts that you can rely on, even if the outcome is a bit different, being able to use their best practice and their skill set can be really helpful in getting through that crazy time and meeting your cyber breach obligations.
Yeah, true, very true. So from a cybersecurity standpoint, what are the critical pieces of digital evidence that eDiscovery can help uncover during that cyber investigation? Like, are there any common challenges in gathering and preserving this evidence? As you said, it was a little different.
Yeah, that's right. So you're trying to get to a different goal. Forensics, though, forensic collection, forensic data, metadata can still be really important. And it's one of the places where there actually is a lot of overlap between eDiscovery and a cyber incident. So how you collect data, how you would go about that using those best practices still very much apply. But there are some things that are, I guess, more important or more relevant to cyber once you've done that exercise. So looking at things like date and time last accessed, what you're trying to do in the cyber world is figure out, was data stolen? Was data accessed by a threat actor, for example? So being able to see dates last accessed, dates last modified might point you in the direction of what did that person or what did that entity who was in the environment have access to. Likewise, you want to limit the scope in everything we do, right? We don't want to over collect because more collection means more copies of data, more costs, all of those things. So if you can know the date your event occurred and then use something like a date created date, you can exclude files that were created after the event. So, oh, if we know we were breached on this date and the threat actor was in there, but these files were all created after that, we know they're kind of out of scope or they're safe in our cyber world. So those are some big things. The other thing that we really see a lot of is often when data is stolen, what the bad guy, the threat actor, will do is they'll give a list and they'll say, hey, here's the data that I stole, so pay me the ransom because I have this. Sometimes those are fakes. We've definitely seen scenarios where the threat actor hasn't actually stolen the data. So what we're doing is then we take that list, it has file paths, file names, information like that to try to validate if what they said they stole actually aligns with what is in the environment. To see, okay, yes, this matches our file structure. We think they did have access to it, or no, they're bluffing here. They have this thing, and maybe those first 3 files on their list are accurate, but after that, it doesn't really make sense. So it's one of those forensic tools and mechanisms you can use to figure out how you need to respond and if this has been a real threat and a real event or not.
Good point. Yeah. I mean, you certainly don't want to be paying for something that isn't actually stolen.
Exactly. And then, if you can verify it, you also then know, okay, this is the data set that I need to be worried about. What sensitive data was in there?
Yeah.
And what do I need to potentially review?
Good point. Okay, so given the high stress nature of responding to these cyber attacks, what are some unique challenges e-discovery teams face when they're working alongside the incident response team, and how can these challenges be mitigated to ensure efficient collaboration?
Yeah, great question. I think at a general level, the biggest challenge for everybody is that most breaches tend to be unplanned for. You didn't know it was coming. You wake up maybe one day or in the middle of the night and you have this situation. It's scary. Someone's in your environment. Maybe they're demanding data. Maybe you can't access your environment. So it's a surprise that you didn't know was going to happen. And that for everybody, including eDiscovery professionals, kind of puts you on the back foot. I think one of the things we see a lot as well is people just don't plan ahead enough in general. Everyone today should know that a cyber event or an attack is a possibility. And there's things you can do to prepare for that proactively, including figuring out, if an event did happen, how would you find the data? What resources would you bring in? What eDiscovery resources and tools are at your fingertips? But a lot of people aren't doing that. So either they're not planning or they are planning, but they're not bringing in the right resources. That often means our eDiscovery professionals are not involved in those preparation conversations. So they could have given input earlier. They could have been a part of the plan so that it's not as much of a back foot response thing. So them being proactive, I think, is a big part of it. Ideally, your CISO, your compliance departments would be doing a great job of bringing these folks in, but they might not be. So it really is an opportunity for the eDiscovery folks to learn more about this. What are the differences? And then kind of inject themselves into the conversation. They can say, hey, we have this ability, we have this technology, we have these skills. Here's how we can help. And by that, they can add value and give themselves positive exposure within their organizations.
Yeah, good point. I mean, then we do have a different skill set for sure than a traditional, forensic person coming into the cybersecurity issue. And the way we do things definitely are different, and the needs for sure for a cyber incident are definitely going to be different. So yeah, I would hope that people will take away from this particular conversation is that you should involve people and they should have collaboration. That would be really helpful.
That's exactly right. I mean, it takes a little bit of time and effort, but it's so much better if you can do that while you're not actually in the event itself and you're not in that chaos and in that rush. It's just going to lead to a much better result.
Yeah, true. Okay, so following up on that, so how can organizations proactively use their eDiscovery techniques to prepare for those potential cyber threats? And rather than just responding to the incidents as they happen, are there best practices that companies can adopt to stay ahead of those attacks?
There definitely are. There definitely are. And, there are things that they might be doing some of already. They just need to do them a little bit more or kind of expand the scope of who is involved and how they're involved. One thing we always recommend, I guess it's not specific to eDiscovery, but given the proliferation of events and attacks today, it's a when, not if proposition. So have cyber insurance. A part of that process is your insurance provider then may have access to eDiscovery experts, people they put on what they call their panel, who you can start to get involved here. So you can, if you don't have your in-house resources, you can get them vetted, you can understand what their process is and start injecting them into the conversations. Another one is something that people should be doing for eDiscovery and litigation as well. And that's really kind of really early in that EDRM life cycle, and what might fall under an information governance concept. So things like data mapping, understanding where data lives, putting flags and different labels on those folders. These are things you can use in eDiscovery, so if there's sensitive data in there or what that is. But doing that work ahead of time really helps in the cyber process as well, because once you have that attack, if you know what files were impacted, what type of data was in there, it's going to help educate your response and how you act and go through the event. One of the biggest issues we see in cyber is just that people don't know what's in their data. So, okay, this data has been stolen, this file server, this email. I don't know how to respond. I have to assume worst case because I just don't know what's in there. So doing these information governance things that also help you in eDiscovery, that prepare for a collection, a legal hold, all of those things can really benefit cyber as well. I would also say there's a lot of tools out there. If you're using a legal hold tool, or if you have something like Microsoft 365, there are tools often built into there that are at your fingertips, that are available, that you could use to protect your data, and that folks just don't know they have. So spend a little bit of time to learn about what those are. For example, there's a data loss prevention module in Microsoft 365 that basically, when someone in your organization tries to send out a file with sensitive information, it gets flagged, and there's someone who approves or doesn't approve that document being sent out, all using those M365 tools. So there's definitely things out there that you might be paying for, and that you could be getting greater ROI on. And I think one of the things a lot of people forget is we think about the threat actor, the ransomware type events, but it can just also be an employee sending out the wrong file. There's breaches that occur other ways as well. So that's a big part of it. The other thing, just the theme here, right? Do things proactively. So start to think about this ahead of time, put it in your planning, and revisit it as you bring on new technology, or there's new members of your organization, or you acquire a new entity and you're onboarding them into things like your litigation hold, into your eDiscovery process. You should also be thinking about how would you respond in a cyber incident and integrating them into that process as well.
Yeah, all good points. And when we were preparing for this, you had mentioned something about don't make these things shelfware. And I think too many companies do that exercise and then it becomes shelfware. And that's really unfortunate. So, yeah.
It's a great point. It's a huge risk, right? There's new case law out there. There's new technology. In the cyber world, the threat actors get more advanced. When we talk about generative AI, they're so sophisticated now in how they can do phishing emails and these deep fakes. It's scary, but at the same time, you can also prepare for it. So if you just leave it on the shelf, you're really kind of opening yourself to a risk there. Make it part of your annual plan, right? Revisit these things, come back to them. I can say in the cyber world, the past 2 years, the biggest events that have occurred from a hacking and a cyber attack perspective have been when entities acquired a new business and they just did not put enough diligence or time into getting that entity they acquired into their processes, into their best practices. They themselves had great security, but that
Yeah,
new entity coming into place, they didn't go through that refresh and revise process fast enough, and so it was a risk and it was exploited.
there you go. Okay, so wrapping up, last question.
Huh?
What are some emerging trends in how eDiscovery is being leveraged to handle the sophisticated cyber attacks and cyber threats that evolve? And how will this collaboration evolve in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. To kind of answer that last point first, I think it's just going to accelerate because there is a lot of opportunity. There is a lot of value that eDiscovery professionals, eDiscovery processes, eDiscovery tech can add to this. As we've touched on, it's also one of those things that you have something in place and are paying for and built already for eDiscovery, whether that's an in-house team or external counsel, a vendor, whatever that might be. You have something for eDiscovery. So by leveraging it for cyber, it's there. You can get the ROI. You're not starting from scratch necessarily. So I think the people in eDiscovery are going to be leveraged more and more and asked to jump in. They add value, and the number of events, attacks that are occurring is just going to continue to arise. The other really interesting thing that we are seeing as a trend is from the tech perspective. For a long time, for these cyber events, when there's been that need to look at data, to understand what's in it, people have turned to eDiscovery tools because that's all they had. The tools were built for eDiscovery. People had eDiscovery processes, and so they tried to then make that work for cyber. What we're seeing now is really a specific focus on building tech for cyber specifically, keeping in mind some of the skills are the same, but the outcome is different. So, for example, you have a tool like Canopy. Canopy is a software that was built for machine learning with cyber in mind specifically. What we're seeing now are tools like Relativity, not to say, hey, you can use us, you can use this tool for cyber. They're building specific modules and specific components with that cyber piece in mind. So I think people have realized there's an opportunity here. The cyber market is still immature. If we do this thing, we, software maker X, can be the leader in this space. So I think we're going to continue to see the development of the software with breach workflows in mind specifically. Those are two really big trends. And then the AI and the Gen AI, right? We're seeing that it's been a huge topic in eDiscovery in general the past year and a half, 2 years. The same thing can apply in cyber. Again, the outcomes are different, but you can use the Gen AI to better understand what's in your data, to assess the risk of what's been taken or stolen, to get to those relevant documents more quickly. So that's another thing. If you are onboarding and upskilling in Gen AI prompting and things of that nature for eDiscovery, it's
Yeah,
again going to be applicable or could add value in the cyberspace.
very good, very good. All right. I think that's about all the time we have. Thank you, Brandon, for being here and for sharing with our ILTA members and the larger audience the intersection of cybersecurity and eDiscovery. I very much appreciate you taking the time today.
Of course. Thank you again so much for having me and this great conversation. I think it's a really important one for folks to have and be thinking about. And again, just be proactive because there's a lot you can do to minimize the disruption when these types of things happen.
Very kind words, yes. A big thanks goes out to my co-sponsor, Chris Acosta, who's the Director of eDiscovery Resources at Morrison and Foster, without whom this particular session probably would have taken place in 2025 with my particular schedule. And so I'm really grateful for his kind assistance in getting this session out to all of you so that you can enjoy it. And thanks again, Brandon, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you so much.